I played Scars of Honor early, and it's not what I expected. So here we are, after 20 plus hours in the test, here's the truth. I jumped straight into the character creator, and right away you're choosing between two factions, the Sacred Order or the Domination. Then you've got your races, and of course, classes, which only had 4 available in the playtest, so I went with Mage. Now, the customization was very limited, but I still think I cooked. So once I got into the actual game, that's where things started to change. Right in, the world actually looked decent. The graphics were a mix of WoW and Terrasland, but very unfinished. Now, instantly, I was getting horrible performance with low FPS, stutters, and lag. And even after tweaking the very limited settings, nothing worked. So, I just started questing. It was very simple like other MMOs. Talk to NPC, go collect or kill something, and return to NPC. As you're doing this, you'll be relying a lot on the map, where you can see all your main quest markers in blue and side quests in pink, making it pretty easy to follow where you need to go. And for the playtest, this is the area we had access to. The Sacred Order starting here and controlling this area, and the Domination here controlling the other half. But if you zoom in right here, you'll see there's a key to join the playtest. So, what does the combat really feel like? First off, it's tap target, so you're locking onto enemies with a couple skill shots mixed in. But the lock on itself felt really off. There were times I was clicking directly onto enemies and it still felt like I wasn't properly targeting them. And for the first couple days, there wasn't even an indicator showing which mobs you had selected, which was a pretty big red flag, and I'll get back to why that matters in a bit. Then there's the abilities. There's a noticeable delay, and a lot of the time, inputs were not registering. So the whole combat system ends up feeling clunky and unfinished. Now, movement though, I'll give them credit, that actually felt smooth and responsive. So it's not all bad, but the core combat definitely needs more work. Now, how does progression actually hold up? For the playtest, everyone started at level 16, so we didn't get that early game experience with no skills, which meant I jumped straight into the huge skill tree. At first, it felt a bit overwhelming, but after spending some time with it, it's actually pretty simple. You've got a lot of freedom in how you want to build your class, choosing between 2 main paths and branching out from there. And if you're curious on what this looks like, you can check out different builds online. I'll link this in the description. Gear also plays a big role in your stats. And in the playtest, the main ways of getting it were crafting or buying it from traders, since there's no gear drops from mobs in the test. But the trader system felt pretty rushed. There's no real filtering or structure to it. So progression overall has some solid ideas, but not everything feels fully polished yet. Now, when it comes to gathering, I tried a bit of everything. Mining was actually pretty satisfying. It's based on time clicks, and once you get the rhythm down, it feels pretty good. Woodcutting is similar, but instead you're holding down and releasing within the shrinking zone. Same idea, just different feel. Fishing though was not good. The lure would randomly switch sides without even hitting the edges, which just felt off. Now, one thing Scars of Honor does differently is the massive resource nodes. When I played in a group, they were actually pretty rewarding. But solo, I hated it. The problem is, most players are farming the smaller nodes, and instead of those respawning, the game sometimes replaces them with these massive ones. So you end up with barely any solo nodes available, which slows down everything if you're not in a group. So it's a cool idea, but the implementation right now is pretty frustrating. Now, on top of everything, there were quite a few bugs during the playtest. And this is where I was losing my mind. There were floating effects from other players that just wouldn't disappear. I was getting around 20 FPS constantly. My character was literally stuck doing 1 damage per hit. And then I realized I was on the temporary stress test server. So I had to remake my character. Archer I went. And if you're enjoying the content, subscribe and leave a like if you enjoy it. I really appreciate it. Now, after getting back to where I was and further down in the story, I might have dragged my main attack off my hotbar, which wasn't supposed to be possible. So I spent an hour trying to get it back, and after resetting everything 1,000 times, it got fixed. Now, when I got back to the grind, one of the most annoying things was the mob respawn rates. They come back so fast that you don't really have the time to do any quest interactions or gather anything in between the fights. So yeah, there's a million more bugs, which again, to their credit, they've released a couple big patches addressing a lot of the issues, but there's still more to do. And remember earlier when I mentioned the targeting issue? This kind of ties into a bigger problem I noticed. There's a lot of missing basic features, like not having a clear target indicator at the start of a test. For a game to have been in development this long, that's something that should have been worked on early. And it's not just that. There's no custom keybinds, no real UI customization, and overall a very limited amount of settings. And one of the bigger issues tied to this, respawning. You respawn at these statues around the world, but PvP is always enabled. So players can just sit there and spawn trap you over and over, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And now quick note, this just got fixed, but even then, it should have been thought of earlier. Now class balance was non-existent. Some classes were just way stronger than others. But to be fair, this was an alpha playtest, so I can give them a pass on that. And I even ran into a situation that felt like it could have been a cheater. I'm not 100% sure, but they were one-tapping everyone, which looked pretty sus. So it's concerning that some really obvious features and issues were overlooked, not because they can't be fixed, but because it's something like the targeting that only took a day or two to fix, so it leaves you asking, why wasn't it done before the test? Now, despite all of the issues, there were definitely some good moments too. The highlight for me was the end of the first part of the playtest, fighting the world boss, Lord of Shadows. That was actually a lot of fun, especially with both factions there at the same time. It turned into a mix of PvE and PvP, and those moments really felt awesome, like two massive armies lining up to fight over no man's land. Now, the world itself is also pretty solid. The biomes look good, and it's actually pretty open and large, which makes it feel like a proper MMO. So the foundation is definitely there. One small pet peeve for me though is the distance blur. It makes everything feel nearsighted, and I do not like it. So I much rather be able to see the world clearly in the distance and use settings to lower its impact on performance like other MMOs. But what I do see in the blur is a key. So here's the truth. Right now, I do not think the game is ready. It feels pretty bare bones, and even an early 2027 release might not be enough to fully polish and fix everything. And honestly, I think part of the problem is that this was shown too early. A stress test like this is always going to be rough, so making it fully public probably hurt first impressions. But at the same time, the transparency could actually help the game long term. Now, everything's out there, feedback is coming in, and they know exactly what needs to be improved. Because underneath all of the issues, the game does have a solid foundation. There are moments where it's genuinely fun and you can see what they're going for. But now the challenge is, it's going to be competing with a lot of other MMOs by the time it releases. So I think it really needs time to improve if it wants to stand out. I'm also interested in checking out what you guys think about the game, so let me know in the comments. So, is Scars of Honor worth playing? Right now, it's not ready, but it's something to keep an eye on, definitely. And if they take the feedback seriously, this has the potential to be a great MMO. And with that being said, I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.